Hello, my name is John Adams and I am a Rent Service Analyst with the Richmond Rent Program. Today's workshop will be on how to file a Notice of Termination of Tenancy with the Richmond Rent Board. When asking the question, how to file a Notice of Termination of Tenancy, I think it's easiest to understand the process if it's broken down into three simple stages. First, what you should know or do before you file a Notice of Termination of Tenancy. Second, what paperwork you need to submit with your Termination of Tenancy notice. And finally, how to submit the paperwork to the rent program. Let's take a look at the first stage, what you should know before you file a Termination of Tenancy notice. The Richmond Rent Ordinance creates two major regulations, rent control and just cause for eviction protections. Units that are subject to both rent control and just cause for eviction protections are known as fully covered. Units that are subject to only just cause for eviction protections are known as partially covered. When undertaking an eviction in Richmond, both fully covered and partially covered units are required to file a copy of the Notice of Termination of Tenancy with the rent program. Only exempt properties do not need to file a copy of the Notice of Termination of Tenancy. Exempt properties include permitted ADUs when the owner resides in the main house, room rentals when the landlord shares a kitchen or bathroom with a tenant, nonprofit homes for the elderly, and short-term rentals, which is defined as a term less than 14 days. If you're uncertain about the status of your property, whether fully covered or partially covered, you may contact the rent program to speak with a housing counselor. You can do this by calling our phone number or visiting our website. In addition, before filing a notice of termination of tenancy, a landlord should make sure they are in compliance with the Richmond Rent Ordinance. Compliance means that the landlord has filed the proper forms with the rent program. Fully covered units should have filed both property enrollment and tenancy registration forms. Partially covered units should have filed only the property enrollment form. In addition, landlords must be up to date on paying their rental housing fees and must have obtained a business license. If a landlord files a notice of termination of tenancy without following these regulations, then the tenant they are attempting to evict may assert this failure as an affirmative defense to the eviction. Next, we will address the question of what to submit to the rent program. The rent program requires 2 and sometimes 3 documents to be submitted. Those documents are the Notice of Termination of Tenancy, a proof of service, and any applicable warning notices. There are several types and variations of the Notice of Termination of Tenancy, including a 3-day, 10-day, 14-day, 30-day, and 60-day notice. Which to use will depend on several factors, including the required just cause that the notice cites as the reason for the eviction. In addition, if the Notice of Termination of Tenancy cites the just causes of breach of lease, nuisance, or failure to give access, then the landlord must also include a copy of the written warning notice. The warning notice informs the tenant of their violation and gives the tenant the opportunity to fix the issue. If you have questions about which notice to use or what language is required, you may consult the Richmond Fair Rent Just Cause for Eviction Homeowner Protection Ordinance or one of the listed California civil codes in this slide. Certain noticing requirements can be complicated, so it's always advisable to speak with an attorney if you're not certain of the requirements in your situation. For more information on just cause evictions in Richmond, you may consult our workshop titled Understanding Evictions in Richmond. I also want to take a moment to go over the proof of service. A proof of service is a declaration under the penalty of perjury that the person delivering the notice of termination of tenancy to the tenant actually did so on the sworn date and by the selected method of delivery. For example, you may place the notice of termination of tenancy in the mail. After placing the notice in the mail, the person who did so would fill out, sign, and date the proof of service. This protects the landlord from any claim by the tenant that the notice was not received. The landlord is legally obligated to include a signed proof of service with their termination of tenancy when giving a copy to the rent program. Failure to do so may invalidate the termination of tenancy notice. Now I'd like to take a couple minutes to go over how to submit your notice of termination tenancy and go over our website. Once the documents are in order, within 2 business days of serving the tenant, the landlord must provide to the rent program a copy of the notice of termination of tenancy, the proof of service, and any applicable warning notices. There are 3 ways in which the landlord may submit their documents to the rent program: in person, by mail, and through our website. If the property has 5 or fewer units, then the landlord may use any of those 3 methods. They may submit their documentation through our website or by mail or in person to the address listed on this slide. If the property has over 5 units, then the landlord must deliver a copy of the Notice of Termination of Tenancy and proof of service through our website. Finally, we're going to take a quick look at our website and show you how you may upload a copy of the Notice of Termination of Tenancy. The first thing you will need to do is navigate to our website. In the URL box at the top of the navigator, you may write our web address, which is richmondrent.org. This will redirect you to our homepage. Alternatively, you may navigate to our homepage through the department lists on the City of Richmond's webpage. You will know you have reached our homepage when you see our title, Richmond Rent Program, and a picture of Richmond's beautiful waterfront. Once on our homepage, you will navigate to the Termination of Tenancy subpage. You can find this navigation panel on the left-hand side of the screen. Here you can click the words Termination of Tenancy. Once you have reached the Termination of Tenancy subpage, you will want to scroll down about halfway down the page until you find a large box that reads, File a copy of the Termination of Tenancy notice. Click on this box and you will be redirected to the city's Form Center. Once on the Form Center, you will need to fill out all the instructed information. There is a section where you will need to fill in information regarding the property, and there is also a section where you will need to fill in information about the unit or units in which you are uploading the Notice of Termination of Tenancy. One form will allow you to enumerate up to 5 units for which you are uploading Notices of Termination of Tenancy. In addition, if you are uploading more than 5 notices of termination of tenancy, you may either fill out this form multiple times, or you may fill out this form once and upload a separate Excel sheet that lists all the notices. The Excel sheet fields should match the information requested on this form, such as unit number, notice expiration date, and just cause cited. Once you have listed all the units on the Form Center, then you will need to upload a copy of the Termination of Tenancy and the proof of service. You may upload the documents as one document stitched together or as multiple documents. The documents should match the enumerated units listed above on the Form Center. Finally, if your Notice of Termination of Tenancy is for breach of lease, nuisance, or failure to give access, you must also upload a copy of the written warning notices. Lastly, at the bottom of the page, you will be asked to sign and date the form. Once the form is completed, click on Submit. After pressing the Submit, you will have completed the process of properly filing a Notice of Termination of Tenancy with the Rent Program. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the process of filing a Notice of Termination of Tenancy. If you have more questions, please feel free to call us at 510-234-736 or visit our website and make an appointment. This concludes our workshop, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.